Why are you even here, you old hag? This isn't the kind of place where a penniless, retired old lady can live. I'm never living with you again, so get out. And don't you dare involve yourself with us unless it's for a wedding or a funeral."
The words uttered by my eldest son's wife shocked both the real estate agent and my son, John. But I was already seething with anger. The story goes back several months. My name is Susan. I'm a 65-year-old housewife. Since getting married, I've supported my kind and hard-working husband and raised our 2 sons. I was planning to live a peaceful life with my husband. But recently, my longtime companion suddenly passed away. Thanks to a significant inheritance left by my husband, I didn't have to worry about my finances. After my husband's funeral, just as I had decided to live on my own, I was approached by my eldest son, John, and his wife, Emily, with a proposal to live together.
"We're just really worried about leaving you alone, Mom."
"Mother, they say you can get senile all of a sudden if you're alone. Maybe it's better if you live with us, for your health."
The loneliness of living alone wasn't hard to imagine. Since my late husband was a talkative person, the house would suddenly become very quiet. I was feeling anxious about whether I could endure such a life. So John and Emily's proposal seemed appealing. Even though I knew John and Emily might be after the money. I know that John works as an office employee, but his salary isn't that high. And Emily, who works part-time, probably doesn't earn much either. The fact that these 2 never suggested living together while my husband was alive, but approached me as soon as he passed away, made me think there was a financial motive involved. However, out of loneliness from my husband's passing, I agreed to let them move in. Once I allowed them to live together with me, John and Emily promptly moved into the house where my husband and I had lived. John and Emily, who brought a lot of belongings, were supposed to move into John's original room, but due to the excessive amount, they ended up placing things even in my husband's study. It was a bit sad to see my husband's study turn into a storage room so soon after his death, but I had to accept it as inevitable. John continued working as usual, but Emily quit her part-time job after they started living with us. She claimed it was because her workplace became too far, but it was only about a 30-minute train ride away. I thought it would have been fine for Emily to continue working, but I also thought it might be okay if she helped with household chores instead. However, Emily didn't do any household chores even though she was at home. She just lounged around on the sofa all day every day. It seemed like she was always watching videos on her smartphone, with her wireless earbuds in, shutting out the world around her. Meanwhile, I ended up handling all the household chores for 3 adults by myself. Naturally, I had to take care of the cleaning, laundry, and cooking. Planning meals every day and shopping for groceries and household items for 3 people by myself was tough. Of course, I couldn't just stay silent about being treated this way. I complained to Emily about this every day. "Emily, how about at least vacuuming? Doing all the chores by myself is tough, especially at my age. Since we're living together, you could help out a little." Whenever I complained, Emily would always sigh deeply and ignore me, retreating to her room. However, about half a year after we started living together, Emily's attitude changed.
"Enough already. You might not understand this, old lady, but I'm busy. I'm here living with you just to alleviate your loneliness, and you should be thankful for that. Don't expect anything more from me."
Emily said this with such apparent annoyance that I was left speechless. Lazily getting up from the sofa, Emily said as she was leaving,
"Just by being here, I make sure you're not lonely, right? In exchange for soothing your loneliness, you do our chores. It's a win-win situation. So, please, don't nag me anymore.
After laying down the law, Emily went into her room. I was just stunned as I heard the door slam shut forcefully. From that day on, Emily's attitude got even worse. Emily started treating me like a maid. I was made to clean Emily and John's room and told to tidy up the weeds in the garden, which I did alone under the blazing sun. When I refused, Emily would threaten, "Well, if you're not useful anymore, I might just have to divorce John," putting John in a difficult position. So I had no choice but to comply. Faced with this unreasonable treatment, I sought help from John, but he was completely under Emily's control. "If you don't pull your weight, Mom, I might end up getting divorced. You need to try harder," he would say, which was hardly a solution. Moreover, on days Emily didn't like my cooking, she would throw it in the trash and suggest to John when he got home, "Let's eat out today. Your mom's food looked unappetizing." Even John would complain. Mom went through the trouble of making it, though. But when faced with, "What? You don't like my proposal? Who's more important to you, your mom or me?" he would apologize to me and go out to eat, following Emily's wishes. I can't count how many times I felt sad over the food that was thrown away and ate alone. One day, as I wondered if I had felt happy since my husband passed away, I received a call from my younger son. My younger son, Michael, and his wife, Lisa, are a lovely couple living 2 stations away. Since I started living with John and Emily, Michael and Lisa have called me several times. Still, not wanting to worry them, I hadn't told them how hurt and saddened I was by John and Emily's actions. "Hello, what's up?" I answered Michael's call with as bright a voice as I could muster, and he said,
Mom, your birthday is coming up, right? We'd like to celebrate. How about we go on a trip together? Of course, we'll cover the expenses.
I was so happy about Michael's invitation that I accepted immediately. It's not great to compare, but it seems John and Emily even forgot my birthday. When I mentioned that Michael and his family were taking me on a trip for my birthday, John said, "Really? Is that so?" And Emily just responded with, "Oh, is that right?" Of course, there was no send-off on the day of the trip. I left the house alone and sad. But when I met up with Michael and Lisa, they were surprised.
"Mother, you've lost quite a bit of weight since we last saw you. Are you okay?"
Really? I never really pay attention to my weight, so I hadn't noticed. Lisa, concerned, agreed, and Michael comforted me by patting my shoulder.
Living together must be tough, huh? No offense, but that Emily seems a bit mean-spirited.
Michael said that when Emily came to greet them for the marriage, she made some disparaging remarks about Lisa's appearance, who was a bit plump. That sounded like what Emily would do. But I pretended not to be bothered by such meanness and cheerfully said, "Let's enjoy the trip now." The trip was truly enjoyable. Seeing various beautiful sceneries made it a very healing journey. I thanked Michael and Lisa numerous times for taking me on the birthday trip, but they just laughed and said it was the least they could do. It must have been because of the happy hours we spent together. During dinner one night, after having a few drinks and my tongue loosened, I ended up blurting out something unintentionally. It's been so long since I've had this much fun." When I said that with a smile, Michael and Lisa's expressions turned somber.
Mom, is there something really wrong with your living situation?
"Please tell us the truth, Mother. I've even thought about wanting to live with you instead of John and Emily."
Drinking too much isn't good. I ended up saying more than I intended. Before I knew it, I had told them all about my daily life with John and Emily. Michael and Lisa got angry when they heard how I was treated at home.
We can't allow such treatment. Come live with us, Mother. Of course, we'll cover the living expenses.
That's right, Mom. You should end that living arrangement.
Michael and Lisa said this out of concern for me. But it's difficult to end a living arrangement once it's begun. I'll think about it, I replied, and we left it at that. I wanted to immerse myself in the dream-like fun for the rest of the trip. After the trip ended, Michael and Lisa, who were very concerned about me, dropped me off at home. But I reassured them I'm okay and went inside. However, the house was far from okay. Dust had visibly accumulated all over the house, and the sink was full of dishes left unwashed for days. When I checked the laundry room, it seemed no laundry had been done, and the basket was overflowing with clothes. Emily, being a stay-at-home wife, should have taken care of the household chores while I was away. But she did absolutely nothing. As I was stunned by the state of the house, Emily, lounging on the sofa, spoke without even welcoming me back.
Could you quickly take care of the chores? A lot has piled up while you were gone. Thanks a bunch.
I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to end this cohabitation and announced that night to John and Emily that I would be selling the house. This house, filled with memories of my husband, was hard to let go of. But it being a pretty old house made it a reasonable excuse to dissolve our living arrangement. John seemed a bit shaken, but Emily was eager to move on, saying, "We've saved up enough money, right? I've found a nice apartment I want to move to." If Emily was on board, John couldn't object. John, completely under Emily's thumb, quickly agreed to end our living together. A month later, I moved out of the house and into an apartment. The house was too big for me, but this apartment was left to me by my husband. I was looking forward to enjoying life on my own here. But to my surprise, John and Emily came to view this apartment, wondering at such a coincidence. I went to meet them on the day of their viewing, hoping to help them get the apartment for a lower price. When I saw John and Emily viewing the apartment with their real estate agent, I greeted them with "Hello, long time no see," to which Emily turned around with a furious expression.
Why are you here, you damn old hag? This isn't a place for a penny less, retired old woman to live. We're never living with you again, so get out. And don't you dare involve yourself with us unless it's for a wedding or a funeral.
Both the real estate agent and John were shocked by Emily's words, but I was already seething with anger. I had thought we would maintain a cordial distance after dissolving our cohabitation and get along as in-laws, but that thought vanished.
Oh, I see. Well, I have no intention of selling or renting this apartment to you, so please leave.
What?
I announced to Emily, who made a grimace. This apartment is one of the 3 apartment buildings that I inherited from my husband. I continued to explain to Emily, who looked dumbstruck. I'm not some old lady living off a pension. I live off the rental income from 3 apartment buildings. It seems John hadn't told Emily out of pride, but I had been paying for all our living expenses while living together with John and Emily. When I mentioned this, Emily blamed John, saying, "You said we would split it." But John just shrank smaller, unable to say anything. Had John offered even a single word of apology here, I might not have given up on him as a mother. But in reality, John just turned pale and said nothing. I couldn't forgive John for this, nor Emily for her words and actions up to now, and said, "Let's end our relationship here. Goodbye." Before returning to my top floor apartment, John and Emily, who followed me, were probably surprised to find that I lived on the top floor of the apartment building. When they called asking, "Mom, you live here?" I responded, "Yes, I do." "So go back home." Emily wouldn't want to live in an apartment with a pension-living old lady, would she? Then there was loud knocking on the front door, and the intercom rang insistently. Through the intercom screen, I could see them both, nearly in tears, yelling,
Mother, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were so wealthy. John never told me. If I had known, I would have been kinder to you.
Mom, please help us. Without your help, we can afford to live in such a nice apartment. I'll make Emily apologize for everything. Just let us in first.
What? You're saying it's all my fault?
It's all like this because you blamed everything on my mom, isn't it?
But you didn't do anything either, John.
even though they were supposed to be apologizing to me. I was speechless with disbelief as John and Emily started arguing. Sighing, I said through the intercom, "If you keep this up, I'll call the police. Don't ever contact me again." They must have been shocked by the mention of the police. John and Emily, shoulders slumped, left disappointed. For a while, John and Emily lived in the house we had shared, but after I sold it, a buyer was quickly found, and they were forced to leave. I thought they must have saved some money since they hadn't contributed to any living expenses during our cohabitation. But soon I received a call from John asking for financial help. Astonishingly, John had spent the money he saved on living expenses on gambling.
If things stay this way, we'll end up living in a rundown apartment. Emily won't stand that. Please, Mom, lend us some money. Even just a little will be fine.
Hearing my son say this made my heart ache. But as a parent, there are times when you must push them away for their own good. Believing this was one of those times, I said, "I don't plan on involving myself beyond weddings and funerals," and hung up the phone. Afterwards, it seems John and Emily moved to a small apartment. Emily sent multiple messages saying, "I can't stand this room. Please let us live in your apartment," but I ignored them. After consulting with Lisa, she blocked John and Emily's number and texts from my phone, so it seems I won't be bothered by their contacts anymore. After enjoying living alone for a while, I decided to start living with Michael and Lisa on the top floor of the tower apartment. The life with Yusuke and Katoho was a peaceful one. They both pay their share of the living expenses and don't leave all the household chores to me. They always consider what makes life easier for me. "My dear, I am happy now." I gazed at my husband's photo and spoke to him. It felt as if my husband's portrait smiled back a little.